Hello, and welcome to Drift Stories. I am the voice that stays with you tonight as you drift into sleep. Tonight's story is about something that happened more than 1300 years ago. A monk who set out from Chang'an spent 17 years walking 50,000 li, all to find the true teachings of the Buddha in his own heart. This is the story of Xuanzang's journey to the West. Now, close your eyes. Let your breath sink slowly down. The third year of the Chang'an era, 1629 AD. It was autumn in Chang'an, and the locust trees along Zhuqiu Avenue were beginning to shed their leaves. A young monk stood at the city gate and looked back at the most prosperous capital in the world. He knew he was about to do something forbidden. The imperial court had banned commoners from leaving the border, and traveling west to seek the Dharma required an official travel permit from the government. He had not received a reply to his request. He decided to go alone. The wind blew in from the direction of the western regions, carrying the scent of sand and earth he had never smelled before. He straightened his gray monk's robe, hung an old water skin over his shoulder, and took his first step. Behind him, Chang'an grew smaller and smaller in the twilight, like a painting being slowly rolled up. He did not imagine then that this journey would last 17 years. It was 27 that year, the best age for a monk, the body still young, the heart already settled, knowing what he was searching for. The wind blew a locust leaf onto his shoulder, and he did not brush it away. That last locust leaf from Chang'an stayed with him for a long, long way. After leaving Chang'an, Xuanzang walked fast through the first stretch. He dared not take the official roads. He kept to the path along the Wei River heading west, passing through the wheat fields of Qinzhou and the yellow earth ridges of Longxi. During the day, he rested in abandoned roadside temples. At night, he traveled by starlight. Along the way, he met passing merchant caravans and refugees fleeing famine, but he never spoke to anyone. He feared being recognized, feared being stopped by soldiers hunting for fugitives. You see, a monk traveling alone in the Tang dynasty was a perfectly ordinary sight, but he was heading beyond the border, and that was a violation of the imperial ban. With every checkpoint he passed, the string in his heart tightened a little more. The sound of the Wei River was especially clear at night, rushing, splashing, like someone following behind him. He told himself it was only the sound of water over stones, but his footsteps quickened anyway. When he reached Qinzhou, he saw distant snow-capped mountains for the first time. It was the snowy summit of Mount Long, gleaming white under the clear autumn sky. He stood at the foot of Mount Long and looked up for a long while. There was no path on that snowy mountain, but he knew he had to cross it. That night, he slept in an abandoned sheep pen at the mountain's foot. The pen had no roof, and when he looked up, he saw the snow on Mount Long. Moonlight fell on the snow, and the whole mountain seemed to glow. Silently, wordlessly, showing him the way. For the first time, he felt that snow could be trusted. That night, lying in the roofless sheep pen, he looked up and saw the snow on Mount Long, glowing under the moon. For the first time, he felt that snow could point the way. By the time Xuanzang reached Liangzhou, it was already late autumn. Liangzhou was the first great city along the Hexi corridor, where travelers from Chang'an stopped to rest before entering the true desert. The temples in the city invited him to give lectures. He expounded on the Nirvana Sutra and the compendium of the Mahayana. Monks and commoners from all directions flocked to Liangzhou, filling the great hall. Xuanzang's voice was not loud, but it was steady, like a quiet river flowing, turning those profound scriptures into words every person could understand. But news traveled too fast. The governor of Liangzhou, Li Daliang, heard of this and sent men to investigate. A monk from Chang'an, without a travel permit, without official documents. Yet, here he was preaching sutras. This was a violation of the law. On the night the soldiers came to arrest him, the moonlight was very bright. Xuanzang slipped out through the back gate of the temple. The moonlight of Liangzhou fell on him and stretched his shadow long across the ground. He did not look back. He walked until he reached the wilderness beyond the city walls. Behind him, Liangzhou became a small blur of lamplight. He knew, from this moment on, he was truly an illegal traveler now. The moonlight of Liangzhou was different from that of Chang'an. Chang'an's moonlight was warm, falling softly on the roof tiles. Liangzhou's moonlight was white and cold, like it could shine right through a man's bones. He walked through that moonlight the entire night. When dawn approached, he turned to look back. Liangzhou was already gone. Guozhou was the last Han Chinese city before the frontier. Further west lay Yumen Pass, the edge of the Great Tang's territory. By the time Xuanzang reached Guozhou, he had been traveling for nearly 2 months. The soles of his shoes had worn through, and his feet were covered in blisters. But he dared not enter the city. The arrest warrant from Liangzhou had arrived by express courier, and his portrait was posted on the city gate. He hid in a broken hut outside the city, waiting for darkness. It was in that broken hut that he met a man, a foreigner from the western regions named Shi Pengtuo. Shi Pengtuo was a caravan guide who traveled between the western regions and the Tang interior. He spoke several languages and knew every path through the desert. He had heard of Xuanzang's story and came to find him on his own, saying he would help him sneak across the border. Xuanzang looked at this stranger. Deep-set eyes, high-nose bridge, curly hair, and asked him why he was willing to take such a risk. Shi Pengtuo smiled and said he too wished to make a pilgrimage to India. He had also brought a chestnut-colored old horse, saying this horse knew where to find water in the desert. That night, there was no moon outside Guozhou, and the wind was strong. Xuanzang mounted the chestnut horse, and Shi Pengtuo led the way ahead. Their 2 shadows moved like drifting ink in the dark, quietly heading west. The wind was fierce, blowing dry camel thorn bushes across the ground outside Guozhou. Those dead thorn balls rolled in the darkness like panicked little animals, tumbling past the horse's hooves and vanishing into the boundless dark. The Calabash River was the first natural barrier before the frontier. The water was not deep, but the riverbanks stretched wide and open. The riverbed was covered in cobblestones that crunched underfoot. On the far bank lay the jurisdiction of Yumen Pass, with beacon towers stationed every 10 li. Anyone on the riverbed would be spotted by the watchmen on duty. They chose a moonless night to cross. Shi Pengtuo built a small raft from poplar branches and dried grass. The 2 men loaded their belongings onto it, led the horse by the reins, and waded step by step through the icy water. In the darkness, the Calabash River was black, reflecting no light at all. Xuanzang's monk robe soaked through in the water, growing heavier and heavier. but he dared not stop. The maverick rose past his knees, past his waist. Behind him, the chestnut horse let out a soft neigh, as if it too was uneasy. After they reached the far bank, Shipantuo's expression suddenly changed. He said he could go no further. The beacon towers lay ahead, and being caught meant a death sentence. He knelt on the riverbank, bowed his head to the ground before Xuanzang, then turned and vanished into the darkness. Xuanzang stood alone on the west bank of the Calabash River, soaked through, with only the chestnut horse beside him. The night wind blew in from the direction of Yumen Pass, dry and cold. He touched the horse's mane and said softly, "Let's go." The horse understood. The chestnut horse snorted, flicked its tail, and started walking. Its hooves crunched on the cobblestones. Shh. The Calabash River were still flowing, only in a different voice. Beyond the Yumen Pass, the world changed. The trees were gone, the villages were gone, the people were gone. Ahead stretched an endless gravel plain, gray-black stones spreading to the edge of the earth. The wind was the only sound, moaning across the empty Gobi, like the land itself sighing. But the greatest danger was not the desolation, it was the beacon towers. From Yumen Pass heading west, there were 5 beacon towers in total, spaced about 100 li apart. Traveling by day was impossible. The soldiers on the towers could see for dozens of li in every direction. On the Gobi, there was no cover at all. A single man and a single horse were the only movement on the entire horizon. Xuanzang could only travel at night. He learned to read the stars for direction, learned to detect moisture in the wind, learned to talk to his horse on those nights when there was nothing but the sound of the wind. The old horse was his only listener. He skirted around the first beacon tower. He slipped past the second while the sentries were changing shifts. But at the third beacon tower, he was discovered. An arrow struck the stones at his feet, sending up a spray of sparks. Xuanzang stopped and raised his hands. Called the officer on duty, came down from the tower, looked at this monk covered in sand and dust, and was silent for a long time. And then, in the end, he gave Xuanzang a bag of water and some dry rations and pointed ahead. Further on, there is nothing but 800 li of shifting sands. The officer said these words, then turned his back and did not look at Xuanzang again. He probably knew what would happen if his superiors learned he had given water and food to any legal traveler. But he gave them anyway. After the last checkpoint, what lay ahead was the Moyan Desert, 800 li of shifting sands. No road, no water, no trace of any living thing. The dunes rose like frozen ocean waves, one after another, all the way to the edge of the sky. Xuanzang led his horse into the sea of sand. The first step sank past his ankle, the second past his calf. When the wind blew, the sand flowed like water, and the footprints he had just made were smoothed away in an instant. The most terrible thing about this place was not the scorching heat, not the thirst. It was the silence, a silence so deep you could hear it in your bones, a silence that could drive a man mad. There was no sound at all. Even the sound of the wind seemed muffled behind a thick cloth. Xuanzang began to chant sutras, not as a prayer, but to keep himself awake. He was afraid of losing his sense of direction in such silence, afraid that as he walked, he would forget where he was walking toward. He chanted the Heart Sutra over and over. The old horse followed behind him, its hooves making a muffled thud in the sand. That sound was the only rhythm in the desert, like a heart beating. After night fell, the desert suddenly turned cold. The heat that could bake a man dry during the day drained away, and the temperature dropped to near freezing. Xuanzang wrapped his monk's robe tight around himself and looked up at the sky. The desert stars blazed so bright, they almost seemed unreal. The Milky Way, like a luminous river stretching across the entire sky from east to west. He thought, "This is the direction of my journey west. The river in the sky flows west, and so on the ground does he." On his third day in the desert, Xuanzang saw a mirage. First, a patch of blue appeared on a distant dune, like a lake, like a sea, the water's surface glittering under the sunlight. He could even see the reflections of trees on the water and what seemed to be the silhouette of city towers in the distance. The old horse started walking faster. It must have seen it too. Xuanzang broke into a jog behind the horse, a surge of warmth rising in his chest. Water. But as they walked on, the blue water kept receding. You took a step, it took a step back. You stopped, it stopped. It was always there in the distance, always just out of reach. When the sun climbed to its zenith, the blue lake finally vanished, as if swallowed in a single gulp by the desert. There was nothing on those dunes after all, only more dunes. Xuanzang leaned against his horse and closed his eyes for a moment. It had been a long time since he had seen real water. Not the hallucinated kind, but the cold kind that you could drink down your throat. He shook the water skin. The sound inside was already very thin. He took a small sip himself and saved most of it for the old horse. Then he stood up, brushed the sand from his clothes, and kept walking forward. The sutras say that all appearances are illusory. He thought, a sea in the desert is probably the best illustration of that. He crouched down and touched the sand beneath his feet, scorching hot and real. At least the sand under his feet was real. The old horse's mane was real. The thirst in his throat was real. Knowing what was real, in a place where everything was false, that was enough. On the fourth day, the desert gave him a different kind of trial. A great wind rose. At first, it was only a dry breeze, lifting a thin layer of dust from the sand's surface. Then the wind grew stronger and stronger, and grains of sand struck his face like needles, making it impossible to keep his eyes open. The sky went dark in an instant, not the darkness of night, but a darkness filled with sand. Xuanzang wrapped his arms tightly around the horse's neck and buried his face in the mane, letting the sandstorm lash against his back. The storm lasted nearly a full double hour. After the wind stopped, the landscape had changed. The old dunes were gone. New dunes had risen in different directions. All the markers he had used to navigate. That dead poplar tree. Those 3 stones stacked together, that dune ridge shaped like a camel's back, had all been erased by the wind. Xuanzang stood still and turned in a full circle. In every direction were dunes that looked exactly the same, with no way to tell them apart. He did not know which direction he had come from, nor which direction he should go. This fear of losing direction, it was even more suffocating than the thirst. He closed his eyes and felt the direction of the wind. The wind came from the west. He remembered the people of Liangzhou saying that the wind in the Mohan Desert always blew from the northwest toward the southeast. He adjusted his course, facing into the wind, and pressed one step at a time into the sand. Every step felt like a tug of war against the entire desert. He walked for he knew not how long, until he saw a small white object in the sand. When he got closer, he saw it was a camel bone, polished smooth as jade by the wind and sand. He picked up that bone and planted it upright in the sand. From that moment on, there was a marker in this desert, though he did not know how long it would be before the next traveler would pass by and see it. On the 5th day in the desert, Xuanzang made a nearly fatal mistake. On a dune, he wanted to drink some water. He untied the water skein from the horse, but his hand slipped. The water skein tumbled from the horse's back and rolled down the slope of the dune. When it reached the bottom, the stopper came loose and all the water poured into the sand. The sand soaked it up within seconds, leaving nothing but a small, dark, wet stain. In that moment, something inside him vanished along with the water. There was no water left, not a single drop. He picked up the empty water skin and hung it back on the horse, a strange, mechanical action, as if his body was still going through the motions of preparing to depart. But his heart no longer knew where to go. He led the horse and kept walking forward. His lips cracked quickly, and his mouth filled with a salty, metallic taste of blood. He put small pebbles in his mouth, trying to trick his tongue with the coolness of stone. But the sand was scorching, and every pebble was baked hot. For the next 4 nights and 5 days, Xuanzang did not swallow a single drop of water. After a while, he could no longer feel the thirst. The sensation was so overwhelming that it had turned into a strange numbness. His body felt light as a bundle of dry grass, and with every step, he was not sure his foot would lift again. The hallucinations returned. The streets and alleys of Chang'an, the crowds who had come to hear him lecture in the Liangzhou temple, and his mother's face. He had left home to become a monk at a very young age. His mother's face had already faded in his memory. But in the desert, that face suddenly became startlingly clear. He saw his mother cooking by the stove, steam rising from the pot, warm, moist air filling the small kitchen. He reached out his hand to touch that mist, but his hand passed through empty space and touched nothing. The old horse beside him snorted, its warm breath landing on the back of his hand. He was pulled back to reality. He was still alive, still lying in the desert. The stars spun above his head as if the whole sky were slowly sinking down. The desert was quiet as an enormous empty house, with only the sound of hooves in the sand. Shh, shh, like a countdown, like counting the steps on the way home. By the 5th night, Xuanzang could no longer walk. He lay slumped over the horse's back and let the old horse choose its own way. He had no strength left, but the horse's nostrils were still searching the air for something. In the desert night, the air carries faint traces of moisture, imperceptible to a human nose, but not to an old horse that had traveled the desert countless times. The chestnut horse suddenly stopped, raised its head, and pricked its ears forward. It was listening for something. Then it pulled hard at the reins, broke free, and broke into a gallop in one direction. Xuanzang tried to call it back, but no sound came from his throat. With his last bit of strength, he staggered after the horse, stumbling a few hundred steps, and climbed over a dune. And he saw it. On the other side of the dune, there was a small patch of grass. The grass was green, a green so vivid in the colorless desert that it almost stung the eyes. In the middle of that patch of grass was a spring. The surface of the water was still as a mirror, reflecting the sky full of stars. The old horse was already standing at the spring's edge, head lowered, drinking mouthful after mouthful. Xuanzang knelt by the spring and put both hands into the water. The water was cool. Cold, so cold, it sent a shiver through his whole body. He cupped the water in his hands and drank it down, little by little. Later, in his Great Tang Records on the Western regions, he described this moment with only 4 characters, Renmajusu. The meaning is simple. Both man and horse came back to life. Xuanzang sat by the spring for a long time, watching the reflections of the stars on the water's surface stirred by the breeze into fine ripples, spreading outward ring by ring, as if counting his heartbeats for him. He suddenly remembered. Today was well over 100 days since he had left Chang'an. He stroked the old horse's forehead and gently placed a blade of that green grass beside the horse's mouth. On the day he walked out of the Mohiyan desert, Xuanzang saw green for the first time. Not a small patch of grass beside the spring, but green stretching in every direction. Poplar trees, grapevines, fields of alfalfa. He had walked so long on roads of only gray and yellow that when he saw the oasis of yew spreading out at the edge of the Gobi, something inside him seemed to switch. Tears streamed down his face, but he was smiling. Yiwu was a very small city, but it was the first stop in the western regions. The people of this city were astonished when they saw this monk emerging from the desert. His monk's robe had been reduced to strips of cloth. His face was burned dark by the sun. His lips cracked like tree bark. But his eyes, an old man of Yiwu later said, those eyes were still bright. The people of Yiwu gave him food and water and let him rest in a temple. Xuanzang slept for a full day and a full night. It was the first time since leaving Chang'an that he slept under a roof. He dreamed of the bells of Chang'an and of the vow he had made at the Great Tang Temple before departing, not to attain enlightenment for himself, but to bring back the true Dharma, so that the people of his homeland would no longer lose their way in the scriptures. When he woke, a light rain was falling outside. It does not rain in a desert, but it rains in an oasis. That gentle rain fell through the whole afternoon, raindrops pattering on the poplar leaves, pit-a-pat, pit-a-pat, like 1,000 gentle fingers softly tapping the rooftops of this little city. Xuanzang sat under the temple porch and watched the rain for a long, long time. He thought of the rain in Chang'an, the rain in Liangzhou, and the rain that had never once fallen in the desert. Perhaps all rain is one rain, just falling on different places. The news from Yiwu traveled with the camel caravans to Gaochang. The king of Gaochang, Kuntai, was a devout Buddhist. When he heard that an eminent monk from the Great Tang was traveling west, he was so overcome that he could not sleep all night. He immediately dispatched envoys with dozens of fine horses to Yu to receive the monk. Xuanzang had originally planned to bypass the trade route and head directly west, but the envoys from Gaochang were too earnest. He simply could not refuse. By the time he arrived at the royal city of Gaochang, it was already deep into the night, yet the city gates were thrown wide open for him. Lanterns hung all along the city walls, illuminating the entire main avenue as bright as day. Wentai stood at the city gate in person to welcome him, holding an incense burner in both hands. He bowed deeply to Xuanzang and said that the kingdom of Gaochang had been waiting for such a master for many years. Xuanzang was lodged in a fine chamber beside the royal palace with the best food and the softest bedding each day. The king of Gaochang came almost every day to discuss the sutras and the way with him, often talking deep into the night. Hu Wentai said, "Please, master, stay in Gaochang. Everyone in this kingdom needs you." Xuanzang said nothing. He knew his road still lay much further on. The royal city was beautiful. The city walls were the color of yellow earth, but the palace halls inside were inlaid with glazed tiles that shimmered peacock green and amber in the sunlight. Outside the city stretched vineyard after vineyard, the vines climbing along wooden trellises to form a long corridor of green. This was the most prosperous place he had seen since leaving Chang'an. But prosperity was not what he was seeking. He stood at the window of his chamber for a long time, watching the flaming mountains sink slowly into the darkness of night, then gently closed the window. Outside, the wind moved through the grape leaves with a soft, rustling whisper. Quantai's efforts to keep him went on for many days. First entreaties, then promises, to build 100 temples in Gaochang, to gather 1,000 monks with all their provisions borne by the royal household. Xuanzang sat in his chamber, facing an invitation grander than anything the palace of Chang'an could offer, and was silent for a long time. At last he said, "When I set out from Chang'an, it was not to become the preceptor of any kingdom. I crossed the moonlight of Liangzhou, slipped past the beacon fires of Yumen Pass, and walked through 800 li of shifting sands, not to settle in any warm room." Quantai was silent for even longer. He walked to the window. Outside, the flaming mountains burned red in the setting sun, glowing like live coals. He said, "Very well, the master shall go to India." But he made 2 requests. First, that on his return journey, Xuanzang would visit Gaochang again, so he would know the master had returned safely. And second, that before departing, he would ascend the teaching platform and expound the sutras for the people of Gaochang for 1 month. Xuanzang agreed. That month, the streets of the royal city of Gaochang were crowded with people who had come from every direction to hear the Dharma. A great tent was raised at the place where he taught, but so many people came that the tent was eventually taken down, and they simply listened under the open sky. After that month, Quantai prepared for Xuanzang 30 horses, 25 attendants, enough supplies to cross the great desert, and letters of introduction to the rulers of 24 kingdoms along the way. On the day of their parting, Quantai embraced Xuanzang and wept openly. The entire city came to see him off, and the sound of weeping mingled with the chanting of sutras, drifting over the red ridges of the flaming mountains. Xuanzang mounted his horse and looked back once at the city of Gaochang. He knew that when he returned, everything might be different. The road beyond Gaochang grew even more desolate. The flaming mountains had burned out their red to the west, fading into a gray, featureless gravel plain. Further ahead lay the Tian Shan mountains. Tian Shan is not one mountain. It is a wall of snow stretching across thousands of li. Cross it and you enter a different world. Xuanzang rode his horse at the head of the caravan. Behind him, the city of Gaochang was no longer visible. Only when the wind blew from that direction could he still catch a faint trace of sweetness from the Gaochang vineyards. He kept the letters written by Quantai close to his chest, 24 of them, each sealed with wax. Before those letters could arrive, he had to walk the hardest road alone. Cross the Tian Shan mountains, pass through Suyab, and step into lands he had never seen. The night was already deep. Camel bells rang out across the silent Gobei in a monotonous rhythm. Ding, dang, ding, ding. Xuanzang sat on his horse with his eyes half closed, gently rocking with a horse's gait. And you, right now, are the same. In the deepest depths of night, walking the same road traveled 1,300 years ago. The wind is the same wind. The sand is the same sand. The stars overhead have not changed. You hear that sound of camel bells. It is Xuanzang's camel bell, and it is yours too. It comes from very, very far away, softly, slowly, sinking with you into the deepest sleep of this night. Good night. Last night, we followed Xuanzang out of Chang'an, across the 800-li river of sand, past the gates of the Gaochang king's city, until his steps came to rest at the foot of the celestial mountains. Tonight, he must cross that wall of snow and step into a land he has never laid eyes on, a land where he will read beneath the Bodhi tree at Nalanda monastery, debate scriptures at the Grand Assembly of Kanyakubja, and carry 657 volumes of Sanskrit texts back to the place from which he once set out. Now, close your eyes. Let your breath slow down. The celestial mountains are at their quietest just before dawn. The wind has stopped. The snow has stopped falling. The entire range seems to hold its breath. Xuanzang stands at the mountain's base, looking up at the snowline. That snowline glimmers with a faint blue light under the sparse starlight, like a frozen river of the Milky Way. His caravan has 30 horses and 25 attendants. The king of Gaochang has nearly emptied his palace to equip him. But Xuanzang knows that crossing the celestial mountains, no horse can help him, no attendant can help him. The celestial mountains are the most impartial of judges. They test every person with nothing but ice and cliffs, regardless of whether you are an eminent monk or a king. He tightens the collar of his sheepskin coat and steps into the first patch of snow. Behind him, the camel bells ring softly in the morning breeze, like a grating chime knocking at the door of this great snow mountain. Ding, dang, ding, dang. Each note rises upward, past the snow line, swallowed by the glacier, never to return. Xuanzang wraps the wool scarf that Quantai gave him twice around his neck, and the scarf still carries the scent of Gaochang's vineyards. Sweet, warm, that is the last time he smells warmth. The path up the celestial mountains unfolds in layers. First come the scree slopes, where horses' hooves slip on loose stones. and every so often, a rock tumbles down the cliff. The echo of it striking the valley floor takes a long, long time to return. Then comes the glacier. The ice is not white, but a translucent pale blue, like an enormous pane of glass pressed under 10,000 years of weight. Walking on it, you can see the crevasses beneath your feet, bottomless, and from those fissures a dim blue light seeps upward like the veins of the earth. The higher they climb, the colder it becomes. The air is so thin that each breath feels like swallowing a blade. The horse's nostrils crust over with ice, and every few steps they must stop to gasp. Xuanzang puts on every piece of clothing he owns. His monk's robe wrapped in sheepskin, the sheepskin wrapped in a blanket. But he is still cold. This is not the kind of cold that stays on the skin. It is the cold that seeps outward from deep inside your bones. One of his attendants, still walking, suddenly sits down and says he just wants to rest a moment. Xuanzang pulls him up and says, "No, you cannot rest here. If you sit down on this mountain, you will never stand up again." They walk for 7 full days. On the evening of the 7th day, they reach the other side of the snow line. Below them lies a green meadow, and a small stream runs from the snout of the glacier. The water so clear, it looks like it does not exist. Xuanzang kneels at the stream's edge, scoops up the water with both hands and drinks. That stream flows all the way west before it joins the great rivers of Central Asia. From this moment onward, the water he drinks is no longer the water of home. Crossing the celestial mountains, Xuanzang enters the territory of the Western Turks. The grasslands here stretch boundlessly, a pale yellow sea that ripples under the wind like waves. Suyab is the seat of the Western Turkic Khagan's royal camp. It is nothing like Chang'an with its towering city walls. It is an immense encampment of tents pitched across the open steppe, and from a distance, the white yurts look like white mushrooms blooming on the grass. The Western Turkic Khagan is named Tong Yabgu, one of the most powerful men in all of Central Asia. When word reaches him that an eminent monk from the east seeks an audience, he is overjoyed. Xuanzang enters the tent to find the Khagan seated on a chair, draped in tiger skins, surrounded by guards and nobles. The campfire inside burns high and bright, its light flickering across every face, now bright, now dim. The Khagan gives Xuanzang a letter of passage stamped with his golden seal. With this letter, not a single kingdom between Central Asia and India will dare trouble him. The Khagan also presents Xuanzang with a silk cloak, remarking that this silk came from Chang'an and has traveled a great circle only to return, at last, to the shoulders of a man from Chang'an. When Xuanzang takes the silk cloak, his fingers recognize that familiar texture, soft, smooth, carrying a scent he has not smelled in a very long time, the scent of home. He presses his face into the cloak and pauses there for a brief moment. Then he lifts his head, presses his palms together in thanks to the Khagan, and sets out once more. Heading southwest from Suyab, the grasslands slowly give way to oases. Xuanzang arrives in a kingdom called Jieshi, the place known today as Tashkent. The city is not large, but its markets are a frenzy of life. Surian merchant caravans converge here, some bound for Chang'an, some for Persia, some for India. The languages in the bazaar are too many to count. Surian Turkic, Persian, Sanskrit, like birds of every color all singing inside one cage. Here, for the first time, Xuanzang sees the cloth and spices of India. He reaches out and touches a bolt of fine cotton, and the softness of it, compared to the rough hemp he has worn his whole life, is like touching a cloud, but he does not buy it. He saves every coin. The moment he reaches India, he will need to buy scriptures. The king of Zheshi also asks him to stay, but Xuanzang has learned how to politely refuse. He says, "I have not come to see a city. I have come to find a path." The king gives him a fresh horse with an extra bag of dried fruit and a bag of parched rice strapped to its back. Xuanzang strokes the mane of the new horse and thinks of the chestnut mare who carried him through the river of sand. She is still behind him in the train, only growing thinner by the day. On the evening he leaves Zheshi, Xuanzang waters both horses at the river outside the city. He waters the new horse first, then the old one. The old horse drinks very slowly, sip by sip, as if she knows there is still a long road ahead, and every mouthful of water must be cherished. Watching the old horse drink, it strikes him suddenly that a man and a horse together on the bank of a foreign river. This moment, exactly as it is already a sutra in itself. Samarkand is far larger than Zheshi. It is the jewel of Central Asia. Its city walls built of mud brick, radiating a reddish gold light in the setting sun. Inside the city, there are fire temples of the Zoroastrians and the ruins of Buddhist monasteries. When Xuanzang sees the abandoned stupas and crumbled shrines, his heart grows heavy. Whence, here in this place, the Buddha's teachings flowed like spring water through every city and town. But by the time Xuanzang passes through, the spring has long since dried up, and all that remains is a cracked riverbed. The king of Samarkand is cold toward him at first. 2 princes have just been killed by wild beasts while hunting outside the city, and the king is still deep in grief. Xuanzang does not avoid the sorrow. He walks straight into the palace, seats himself cross-legged before the king, and begins to expound the sutras. He speaks of birth and death, of impermanence, of how all meetings must end in parting, not preaching, but simply keeping the king company. As the king listens, the tears begin to fall. 2 days later, the king orders the first Buddhist temple in the city to be rebuilt. On the morning Xuanzang leaves Samarkand, the king rides with him for 10 li to see him off. The light of dawn falls on the golden mud brick walls, and the whole city glows like a flat bread fresh from the oven. That warm yellow light is not gold. Gold is too cold. It is the color of wheat, the color of bread, just baked, the color in all this world, most likely to make a person think of home. Riding on horseback, Xuanzang turns around and sees the king still standing at the city gate. 10 li of dusty road lies between them, but in the thin morning mist, the king's figure looks like a solitary old desert poplar. Planted still, unmoving, Xuanzang presses his palms together in a parting bow, then spurs his horse to the west. The iron gate is not a fortress pass, it is a gorge. On both sides, sheer cliffs of rust-red rock rise so high you cannot see the top, only a thin crack of sky. The gorge is narrow, so narrow in places that a single horse must turn sideways to pass through. Beneath your feet is a path of loose stones and a dry riverbed, and the horse's hooves strike hollow echoes that bounce back and forth between the walls. A sound like someone walking behind you, step for step. On the day they cross the iron gate, a light rain begins to fall from the sky. Rainwater slides down the cliff walls, washing the red rock dust into thin crimson streams that look like the mountain itself is weeping. At the deepest point of the gorge, Xuanzang stops and tilts his head up to look at that narrow gray slit of sky. He thinks of the Jade Gate Pass, of the moonlight over Liangzhou, of that gust of autumn wind outside the gates of Chang'an. Those memories are now well over a year old, but here, inside this gorge, all distance dissolves. Chang'an is far away. India is far away. He stands in the narrow crack between two worlds, with road ahead and road behind, neither one ever reaching its end. He does not linger long. The wind in the iron gate blows cold, like a hand gently pressing against your back. At the far end of the gorge, the sky suddenly opens. Before him stretches a broad valley, and on the far horizon rises the snow line of the Hindu Kush, white as a threshold that will never melt. Xuanzang turns around to look at the iron gate he has just passed through. Seen from this side of the valley, it is nothing more than a tiny crack, as if someone drew a fingernail once across the red face of the mountain. Such a small slit, and yet it separates two worlds. Past the Iron Gate, Xuanzang enters the Hindu Kush, the Great Snow Mountains. If the Celestial Mountains were cold, the Great Snow Mountains are perilous. The paths here are nothing like the gentle glaciers of the Tian Shan. They are sheer cliffs, sliding scree, snow cornices that could collapse at any moment. The horse at the head of the train often steps straight through the snow crust, sinking an entire leg, and it takes 3 or 4 men pulling together to haul it free. On this stretch of the road, some of Xuanzang's attendants fall ill. Some are separated and never found. Some, on a blizzard-racked night, simply never wake up again. Each time he loses someone, Xuanzang builds a small cairn of stones beside the road. That is the only thing he can do. He has no time to stop and mourn. The Great Snow Mountains do not wait for anyone. If you do not cross the pass before nightfall, you freeze. On the hardest stretch of all, Xuanzang walks until his boots fall apart, his toes exposed to the cold and turning purple. He wraps his feet in sheepskin and keeps walking. 1 step, then 1 more step. Later, when he writes about this passage in the Great Tang Records on the western regions, he devotes only a few short lines to it. He is not accustomed to speaking of his own suffering, but the snow mountains know, the stone cairns know. Those who stayed behind forever on the great snow mountains know. Every step he takes, he is walking on the kindness and sacrifice of others. On the evening, they crest the final pass. The sky clears, the setting sun falls upon the snowfields, and the entire expanse of white turns into a sea of rose. Xuanzang looks back at the road he traveled. The stone cairns are no longer visible, buried under fresh snow. But beneath the snow there is still stone, and beneath the stone there are still those who will remain forever on the great snow mountains. He places one hand over his heart and recites a short sutra. The wind scatters the words, but the snow remembers. Crossing the great snow mountains, Xuanzang enters Gandhara. Gandhara was once the most magnificent place in the entire Buddhist world. Even during the Buddha's own lifetime, monasteries and stupas had already been built here. But by the time Xuanzang arrives, Gandhara has fallen into decline. The ancient stupas still stand, but the gold leaf has peeled away from their surfaces, exposing the gray stone bricks beneath. Wild grass grows thick on the ruined walls of the monasteries, and now and then a lizard pokes its head out from a crack in the stone, then pulls it back in. Xuanzang walks through these ruins for a long time, touching every fragment of surviving stone carving. The faces of the Buddha on those carvings are Greek. Deep-set eyes, high-bridged noses, curling hair. The mark left behind by Alexander's Eastern campaigns. The first handshake between Eastern and Western civilizations, captured in the face of a Buddha statue. Xuanzang stands for a long time before a stone Buddha that remains only from the waist down. No head, no arms, just the seated legs and the faint, blurred folds of the robe across the knees. But the lines of those folds are so beautiful, like ripples on water, like traces of wind, as if the stone itself were breathing. Xuanzang kneels before this headless Buddha, hands pressed together. He does not recite a sutra. He simply stays there quietly for a while, as if keeping company with an old friend. Then he stands, brushes the dust from his knees, and continues southeast, the direction of the Ganges. Before leaving Gandhara, he picks up a small stone chip from among the ruins, perhaps a corner of a relief that once fell from a stupa, with a faint outline of a lotus petal still visible on his face. He places the chip inside his traveling pack. That pack already holds many things: the dust of Liangzhou, grains of sand from the river of sand, raisins from Gaochang, a ball of wool thread from Suyab, and his own dwindling reserves of strength. But a stone from the land of the Buddha must claim a space of its own. The Ganges appears before Xuanzang on an ordinary evening. No thunder, no golden light, no supernatural omen of any kind. It is simply a broad, slow, mud-yellow river resting quietly across the great plain, with Bodhi trees and mango trees lining both banks. But Xuanzang knows he has arrived. From Chang'an to this riverbank, he has crossed 2 great snow mountain ranges, traversed 3 deserts, and passed through several dozen kingdoms. The calluses on his feet are now so thick he can step on sharp stones and feel nothing. He stands at the river's edge and pulls off his ruined boots, barely half a boot left of each, and walks barefoot into the water. The river flows over his ankles, warm. On the surface of the Ganges, people are setting lamps adrift, small lotus lamps drifting slowly downstream into the distance. Xuanzang presses his palms together and lowers his head, gazing at his own reflection on the water. That reflection no longer resembles the young monk who stood outside Chang'an's gates 2 years ago. His face is burned dark by the sun, his cheekbones jutting, his eye sockets sunken deep. The only thing unchanged is the light within those eyes. Facing the Ganges, he makes a wish, not for himself, for those who helped him, who saved him, who gave him their last sip of water. May their next lives not require them to travel so far. The lotus lamps drift farther and farther downstream, one after another, like a string of prayer beads slowly dissolving into the dark. The dusk on the Ganges is long. The sun sinks very slowly, as if the river is so fast and so heavy that even the sun cannot bear to let go of it all at once. Xuanzang sits by the river until the sky goes fully dark. This is the first time in over 2 years of walking that he has truly sat down, not to press onward, not to evade pursuit, just to sit. Nalanda Monastery is the highest seat of learning in the entire Buddhist world. Its outer walls stretch for more than 10 li, and over 10,000 monks live within them. More than 100 lectures are delivered simultaneously each day, and the main lecture hall alone rises several stories high. The library holds 9 million scrolls of scripture, shelves packed with palm leaf manuscripts, Sanskrit texts inscribed with iron stylus on treated palm leaves, every page giving off the scent of sandalwood and ancient ink. On the day Xuanzang arrives at Nalanda, every bell in the monastery rings. Not for him, it is simply the daily evening bell. But in his memory, the bells that day ring louder and clearer, as if the entire monastery were welcoming him. The Deabat of Nalanda is Master Shilabhadra, a man well over 100 years old, his hair completely white, but his eyes as clear as a child's. Master Shilabhadra had stopped giving lectures 3 years earlier. His body had grown too old. But when he hears that Xuanzang has come, he makes an exception and ascends the teaching platform once more. The first words he speaks to Xuanzang are, "I have been waiting for you for a long time." Xuanzang kneels before Shilabhadra, and tears stream down his face in an instant. That feeling of being understood, of being caught and held, it melts a person more completely than the waters of the Ganges, more than the snows of the mountains, more than any desert spring. That night, Master Shilabhadra gives Xuanzang the meditation cell next to his own. The cell is small. Only one window, one wooden bed, one oil lamp. Xuanzang lies on that wooden bed, listening to the steady breathing of the old man through the wall. He suddenly realizes this is the first time since leaving Chang'an that he has ever fallen asleep to the sound of another person breathing. All those nights, so many nights, what he heard was wind, sand, snow, or only the sound of his own heartbeat. But tonight, at last, he hears another person's breath. Xuanzang stays at Nalanda for 5 years. In those 5 years, he masters Sanskrit and reads through the monastery's most important scriptures, the Yoga Karabhume, the Madhyama Kakarika, the Shatashastra, the Abhidharmakosha. He rises before dawn every day and sits beneath the Bodhi tree, reciting texts from memory. Those scriptures are composed in verse, meant to be read like poetry. Each Sanskrit syllable has a fixed length, short or long, and when chanted, they rise and fall like fingers plucking the strings of a lute, a melody of high and low. Xuanzang prefers to read at night. The nights at Nalanda are very still. Aside from the clack of the night watch monk's wooden clapper, there is only the rustle of wind through the Bodhi leaves. He moves his bronze oil lamp close to the manuscript and reads, character by character. The pages of the palm leaf sutras are dense with the fine marks of an iron stylus, and in the lamplight, those marks seem to move. like ants marching in formation, like grains of Ganges' sand, arranging themselves one by one into sentences. Sometimes he reads all the way through until dawn, and when he pushes open his door and steps into the courtyard, he sees the eastern sky beginning to pale. The morning star still hanging by the horizon. He stands beneath the Bodhi tree and closes his eyes, not for sleep, but for a kind of deep gratitude. Gratitude that this tree is still here. Gratitude that he has eyes to read these words. Gratitude for those who helped him reach this place, even though so many of them left behind not even their names. In those 5 years, he copies over 1,000 pages of palm leaf scripture by hand. The iron stylus he uses for the copying was a gift from Master Shilabhadra, and when its tip scratches across the palm leaf, it makes a soft, crisp sound, ga, 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 like an insect nibbling a leaf. He loves this sound. It is not the sound of chanting, nor the sound of bells. It is simply a very ordinary sound, the sound of a person doing something. One thing done for 5 years until it becomes part of your breath. The 17th year of the Chang'an reign, the year 643 of the Common Era, Xuanzang has now spent 5 years at Nalanda monastery and traveled extensively through the various kingdoms of India. He has attended the great alms-giving assembly at Kanyakubja. At that assembly, he presented his theses as the chief disputant, and for 18 days, no one was able to refute him. His name is celebrated in every Buddhist kingdom across the Indian subcontinent. But he has decided to go home. Master Shilabhadra does not try to keep him. The old man simply looks at him and says, "You came as one man. You leave with 1,000 pages of scripture. It is time for you to return. There are people in the place you came from who are still waiting for these words." Xuanzang bows 3 times, touching his forehead to the ground before Shilabhadra. The old master rests one hand atop his head and says nothing more. On the day of parting, the bells of Nalanda ring out again. This time, Xuanzang feels that the bells are ringing for him. He leads his horse out through the monastery gate. Strapped to the horse's back are not provisions and water, but 657 volumes of Sanskrit scripture, wrapped in layer after layer of oilcloth. He turns back once to look at the spire of Nalanda's great stupa. In the thin morning mist, it rises like a brush pen pointing at the sky. He leads his horse onto the road he once traveled, now in reverse. 16 years ago, he walked this road as one man, with only an old horse behind him. Now he has 25 horses, 657 sutras, and 17 years of layered memory. The cold of the snow mountains, the heat of the desert, the warmth of the Ganges. Those memories weigh more heavily on horseback than the sutras themselves. But he knows every memory is a key that can unlock a door he has not yet translated. The road home is no smoother than the road he took to get here. He follows the Indus River back west, and when he reaches the ferry crossing, the river spreads wide and the current runs fast. The ferrymen use rafts of inflated sheepskins to cross, each raft carrying only a little at a time. Xuanzang ferries his scriptures across in batches. On the final crossing, a sudden gale rises. The sheepskin raft capsizes in the middle of the river. Xuanzang watches helplessly as the wooden crates holding his scriptures sink into the water. 50 bundles of sutras, every word of them copied by his own hand. In that moment, the river becomes the cruelest thing he has ever seen. He kneels at the riverbank and wails. His attendants have never seen him cry, not crossing the desert, not climbing the snow mountains, not losing his companions. But when the scriptures sink to the bottom of the river, he weeps. When the weeping subsides, he stands up, wipes his face, and begins to walk back. In the kingdom of Kapisa, he finds a quiet place and, relying only on memory, begins to rewrite every lost scripture, stroke by stroke. He writes for almost a year. Those sutras have long since grown into the marrow of his being. The river can wash away paper pages, but it cannot wash away words that a man has spent 5 years carving into his own bones. That year, in Kapisa, is the slowest he has ever written, not for the sake of accuracy, but because each character he inscribes is a race against the Indus River. The river has already swallowed 50 bundles of scripture. He cannot afford to lose one more word. The iron stylus touches the palm leaf very lightly, but the echo it leaves in his heart is very heavy. On the page, those sutras are simply lines of characters. In his heart, they are a journey, every step from Chang'an to Nalanda. When he reaches Gaochang, Xuanzang pauses to wait. Gaochang is the last major kingdom on the western region's road into the Great Tang, and from here, Xuanzang writes a letter to Emperor Taizong. He writes for a very long time, not because he does not know what to say, but because he needs to find a way for the emperor to forgive him. He was, after all, a fugitive who fled the empire without permission. In the letter, he writes of the road he walked over 17 years, of the 657 sutras he's bringing home, of how the world beyond the Tang border sees this empire. He does not defend himself, he simply tells calmly. The letter is very long, and when he finishes, his fingers are so stiff from gripping the brush that he cannot straighten them. A courier rides east with the letter, and Xuanzang stays in Gaochang waiting for a reply. He waits for the better part of a year. In those days, he lives in a small temple on the outskirts of Gaochang, and the only things he does each day are sit in the sunlight and organize his scriptures. He has been walking for so very long that when his body finally stops, it does not know how to be still. Sometimes he startles awake in the middle of the night, convinced he is still in the desert, convinced his water skin has tipped over again. Then he looks out the window and sees the moonlight of Gaochang, soft and silver, rounder and brighter than the moon of Liangzhou. He closes his eyes again and tells himself, I am almost home. The moonlight in Gaochang truly does seem rounder than Liangzhou's, not because it is actually rounder, but because he is closer to home. He spreads an old blanket across the temple courtyard and lays out all 657 volumes of scripture, one by one, to inventory them. Moonlight falls on the palm leaves, and every character is legible. He touches each volume, one after another. This is the Yoga Karabhumi. This is the Mayama Kakarika. This is the Abhidharmakasha annotated in Master Shilabhadra's own hand. He recognizes everyone. Everyone is here. 17 years. Not a single step wasted. In the first months of the 19th year of the Zhengguan reign, Xuanzang returns to Chang'an. 17 years have passed since that autumn day when he first set out. The city gates of Chang'an are still the same gates. The scholar trees in front of the gates are still the same scholar trees. They are only taller now, their roots only deeper. The people of Chang'an crowd the entire length of the Vermilion Bird Avenue, everyone straining to catch a glimpse of the monk who walked 50,000 li. He leads a gaunt horse through the city gate, and on the horse's back are heavy wooden crates. Inside those crates are 657 volumes of Sanskrit scripture, the sum of every answer he walked 17 years to find. Emperor Taizong summons him to Luoyang and questions him endlessly about the lands of the western regions. Xuanzang answers each question, unhurried, unflustered. The emperor says, "Write it down." And so Xuanzang begins to write the Great Tang Records on the western regions. A book of 12 full volumes recording every kingdom he passed through, every river, every city. He sleeps only 2 or 3 hours each day. All the remaining hours he spends translating the sutras he brought back from India. He translates for 19 years, longer than he spent on the road. He carries these words from one ancient language into another ancient language. The way you transplant a tree from one patch of earth to another. Right now, as you close your eyes, those words are still here. Those sutras, transformed from Sanskrit into Chinese characters, are still being read 1400 years later. Xuanzang walked a very long road, but the things he brought back have traveled farther still. Can you hear those camel bells? From Chang'an to India, from India back to Chang'an, and now across the darkness of this very night, settling gently beside your pillow. You do not need to do anything. Only close your eyes. Sink down together with all the roads into the deepest sleep. Good night.